Hey, what's up guys, Riff here. So today we got multiple anime related stories to cover, beginning with this one right here involving Trash Taste Podcast. This is a podcast ran by CDawgVA, Giguk, and the Anime Man. And obviously this is run by three pretty popular anime YouTubers, so it is not too surprising that their content and their opinions are heavily scrutinized. And recently, it's definitely become the popular thing to criticize on Twitter. I routinely see clips from their podcast being shared on Twitter, and people are just absolutely roasting them. And sometimes I truly believe what people are saying about them and their opinions are pretty nitpicky, and even some of their bad takes are just subjective, right? Like you can agree on a subjective basis. But this recent one I saw, there is no saving. This one, nobody should be able to defend. This is their take on visual novels. And what they're going to say represents not just a differing opinion of theirs, but something that I think is a bigger problem with anime and anything related to it currently. And what they say is that visual novels are too long. They're not digestible for the average reader.
I think more visual novels should be around this very digestible kind of like playthrough completion time. Because a lot of visual novels are just like fucking 20 hours. Like even something like Doki Doki, which I understand why you need that slice of life bit at the beginning. God, it felt so long.
Doki
God,
Doki,
it felt so long.
I think for me, Doki Doki took 6 hours, 7 hours.
Yeah. That's about like on, especially in this day and age, that's about on just like pushing
it's too long.
Playthrough time that I'm willing to do.
So I definitely disagree with their take on visual novels and the length of visual novels. And if you look at the quotes and replies to this tweet, you'll see a lot of people feel the same way about this. They think that visual novels should have some depth to them, and they should be longer, and they should not be condensed because people can't sit there with the attention span to grind through them. And I think this is an issue that goes way beyond everything. It's just a problem with anime and manga in general these days. Like, how often do you see 24 or 30 plus episode long seasons? Everything is so condensed nowadays, whether it's the actual number of episodes per season or the number of seasons or the additions of a manga. Everything is so condensed because it seems like people have a very hard time paying attention to anything. Thank you, TikTok and other short form content for that. But honestly, I think the boys are missing the key second word of what they're talking about. Visual novels. This is exactly what you signed up for. You set yourself up for an experience. You're going to dedicate time to completing this visual novel. They're supposed to take some time. It's like going to the bookstore and buying a 300 or 400 page book and then complaining about the fact it's going to take you a long time to finish. That's exactly what you signed up for. You should know exactly what you're getting into. And on top of that, we see quotes like this saying, thinking a story should compromise its length just because you don't want to find the time to play it is certainly a take. And I understand on one hand, like personally, I have a lot less time than I used to sit down and enjoy these visual novels. But that doesn't mean visual novels should cater to someone like me. You should find more time to do these things if you truly enjoy them. And on top of that, I think, again, this is a symptom of a bigger problem, especially with younger people nowadays, where they just can't sit down and focus on anything. Everything has to be more digestible and what have you. I mean, in schools currently, in America at least, right now, teenagers and kids, their illiteracy rates are skyrocketing. These kids don't know how to read, and their attention spans are completely fried because of short form content and things like that being bombarded at them every single day. And to now try to alleviate that problem, they're trying to condense a lot of books that are typically shared to students in schools, and they're taking classics like The Great Gatsby, for example, and they're trying to condense it so these kids might actually sit down and read them. And they're trying to take like 5 paragraphs of text and condense it down to 2 lines of text so they hope these kids can sit down and actually read it. And you know what's happening anyways? They're still not reading it. And it just ruins the entire process because they're taking away key context, key dialogue, and what have you. It is ruining the stories. And that's what would happen with visual novels if you did the same thing to try to condense them down to be more digestible for people who don't have the time or the patience to sit through them. And you can see in quotes here, DDLC being 7 hours felt too long. And then here's some examples of the boys consuming content that took much, much longer. I think, like I said, having less time is a factor in this. But as Giguk would begrudgingly admit, the long buildup in games like DDLC, for example, that slice of life buildup is what made that game so successful. That is the reason that game went viral back a couple years ago, and it's still relevant now, is because the beginning of Doki Doki Literature Club builds you up through this slice of life atmosphere, and then it hits you with the dark twists. That is why it is so popular, and that was so key. That buildup was so key. You needed those hours of content to bring you into the story more like that. That's why we shouldn't be condensing these things. And on top of that, we have quotes like this saying, visual novels are too long. When I open their settings app and hit them with their 100 hours of weekly TikTok screen time. TikTok is an absolute plague, and really short form content in general. People cannot sit through anything anymore, especially younger generations. And I'm not talking about like long form content. Like, I'm not expecting anyone to sit down and watch a 4-hour long video essay, iceberg type thing. Like, no. They can't even sit through 20 seconds of a person talking without 4 other videos playing on the sides of the screen with people like, cooking or doing art or things to keep the dopamine rush coming and more things in your face to keep you focused on someone simply talking for more than 5 seconds. It's a real problem. And here's another quote saying, visual novels are an amazing medium because they gatekeep themselves, which is great. But unfortunately, as more people complain about these things and get louder and want to make these things more shortened, we see the possibility for unfortunate changes. We've seen it with anime and manga. We've seen people screech about things to the point where it's actually affecting the mediums a little bit. And hopefully that is not the case with any sort of visual novels if people keep complaining about the length of them. But speaking of gatekeeping, there's also some tweets I want to cover in this video. A lot of people crying about anime as per usual, and we're going to see some usual suspects and the almost bot-like atmosphere that currently exists on Twitter. So we're going to begin with this tweet right here. It is saying this. People call this type of anime peak fiction and then ask why they're single. And they give some examples of these anime with Nagatoro, Tagaki, and Uzaki-chan, and My Dress Up Darling. Well, anytime you see someone posting hobbies or interests of other people and saying this is why you're single, projection. It's projection pretty much every single time. And you see these sorts of tweets, they're not banging like they used to. People used to post stuff like this and would get 100,000 likes. This person's barely scraping up 600 with this engagement bait. And this format right here might seem familiar. Well, it's because it is familiar. It's a stolen tweet. This sort of format has existed for many, many years. Like 2022 called, they want their reused, rehashed meme back. But basically we saw this one a lot of times. But notice something between this original one and the previous one we just looked at. They actually removed Komi-san and replaced it with My Dress Up Darling. And yeah, Komi is finally free from this absolutely terrible meme format. Well, good for them. But anyways, if you look at the replies, you can see how disingenuous this entire conversation is, where this user says, Tagaki is actually peak romance though, where the original poster says, it could be, I haven't seen it. And then another person says, do you have something against romance anime? Where the original poster replies saying, I have a romance anime profile picture. I stole this tweet in 2022 and decided to tweet it again. That's it. Yeah, that's pretty lazy and embarrassing, this whole thing. And you can see quotes like this ratioing the original poster about 20 times over, saying, guy walking into a completely stripped mine with a pickaxe on his shoulder here. Because there's really nothing to farm anymore. These tweets are tired and they're not even getting the type of engagement they used to. And also you might have noticed the original poster doesn't even have a blue check mark next to their name, meaning they are not a Twitter Blue subscriber, which means they're not making ad revenue from any of their posts or their engagements. So they are not doing this for financial reasons. They are doing it literally for the love of the game, for the attention. That is what they're doing all of this engagement farming for. And that is pretty pathetic. Like, you couldn't even borrow your mom's credit card to pay the $10 a month to Elon Musk. So at least you could justify this by saying you're rage baiting people for a couple pennies on Twitter. But anyways, let's move on to another tweet that's getting a lot of attention, tens of thousands of likes, and lots of people making violent threats over anime once again. So in this post, this user has an image from Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, and they say this, man, I hate that Dragon Maid is the way that it is because it 100% had the potential to be a wholesome anime about two mother figures raising a daughter, but instead they collaborated with Epstein for the script. Ah, yes, another weird comparison of fictional content to the real-life, evil, terrible, disgusting predator, Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah, imagine seeing like a victim of Epstein and being like, what happened to you is really bad, but I think it's pretty comparable to this anime called Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. It's ridiculous. And as always, with these sorts of complaints, you're calling it the Epstein show, but you're watching it. Like, what does that say about you? It is the most classic self-own you see on Twitter with people like this making these gross comments about anime. And here's another thing you always expect. This person repeating over and over again threats against the creators of Dragon Maid, which is not the first time we've seen this. And luckily, I was able to take this screenshot, even though they deleted it because the bookmarks are bugged on Twitter. So it was still in there, so I could take this screenshot before they hit it. But yes, another death threat over anime because you just couldn't ignore this and go consume something else that you actually like. And also, like I said, botting. Now, there is a huge botting problem on Twitter. It's always been this way. Ever since they made likes private on Twitter, the botting problems got even worse because people can't even check to see if other people's tweets are being liked by suspicious accounts. And also, there's a lot of people botting with replies. And just look at this, whether this is actually the work of bots or the bot-like minds of real people, this is very strange. You have 4 different users here repeating the same exact comment, saying they almost made Awesome Yuri Romance and they let Epstein into the writing room. 4 comments saying the exact same thing, word for word, bar for bar. Very, very strange behavior, but as always, as Yogensha here points out, the weekly, in quotes, I wish Dragon Maid was less problematic, end quote, tweet is here again. Instead of making constant Epstein allegories and molding, you could just watch something else. And the weak quote retweets crying about having to skip scenes. Have you considered it's maybe not for you? And that pretty much sums up everything we have to say about this situation. These people would rather make these gross comments and complaints and cry on Twitter instead of just consuming something else. The infinite amount of media out there that might be better suited to them. And now here's another comment, and honestly, do we even deserve anime anymore? Like, the sins of people over here on Western Twitter is getting just a bit too much. It's getting a little bit too much when people feel comfortable making weird comments like this. But yeah, that is going to do it for this video. Some shenanigans going on in the realm of anime, manga, visual novels, and alike. But as always, feel free to share your thoughts about today's topics in the comments section down below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.